Gandhi, leader in achieving Indian self-rule, was slain by a fanatic. As his remains lay in state, great throngs of grieving natives paid final homage to their lost leader. In the mournful procession, Pandit Nehru, head of the new independent government, rode in the funeral car with the martyr's body as it was carried to the burning ghat. According to Hindu custom, the remains were cremated in a fire of wood, fragrant oils, and incense. And the ashes of the man who exerted such a great influence on his people were consigned to the timeless, sacred Ganges. Warfare raged between the Arabs and Jews following the declaration of the UN partition plan, which established the new state of Israel, shown in the unshaded portions of the map. Leaders opposing the creation of the new Jewish state are King Ibn-Saud of Arabia, King Farouk of Egypt. Also allied with them is King Abdullah of Trans-Jordan, in whose army are these British-trained Arab legionnaires. Israeli Premier Ben-Gurion defied the Arab League and planned the resistance of his people. Following bitter street fighting and house-to-house battles, Haganah, the Israeli army, captured the vital port city of Haifa. With the Star of David flying over the port, immigrant ships landed Zionists whose zeal for a homeland is undimmed by the raging warfare. Upon landing, all able-bodied men are enrolled in Haganah to continue the fight for the independence of Israel.
In Palestine, women of the Israeli army are reviewed by one of their leaders during a lull in the struggle to establish the new Zion state. While desperate efforts are made by the United Nations to effect a truce, bombing raids kill and injure hundreds in the Jewish shopping district of Jerusalem, and civilians sadly rescue survivors. Throughout the Holy Land, efforts to effect a settlement of questions involving boundaries prove futile, and only United Nations observers with a flag of truce succeed in halting the fighting. The Arabs watch in silence as errands of mercy are performed. The world's prayers for a peaceful settlement in the Holy Land go with Count Folke Bernadotte, UN mediator, but irresponsible factions bring about his assassination.
In Berlin, the Allied Control Council came to an end. General Lucius D. representing the United States, Britain's General Bryan Robertson, and General Kernig of France, and the Russian commander in Berlin, Marshal Sokolovsky, failed to agree on the currency issue. Germans in the western sector received Allied marks. The Soviets countered by issuing new money of their own. On the black market, the rate of exchange in Allied and Soviet marks went to 30-1 against Russian money, despite vigorous efforts by the Soviets to control their value. In reprisal, the Russians attempted to drive the Allies out by cutting off their delivery of supplies to Western Berlin by rail, by canal, and by the great German Autobahn. The United States and England then organized the airlift and transported record tonnages of food and fuel into the city. Because of the gravity of the situation, the problem was presented to the UN General Assembly by the Western powers. U.S. Secretary of State Marshall spoke for the Allies and claimed that Russia's actions constitute a threat to peace. In reply, Andrei Vyshinsky of Russia denied Marshall's charges and accused the United States of planning atomic war. Then British Foreign Secretary Ernest Bevin ridiculed Vyshinsky's charges.
We are invited to put our security in the pool, with a nation which will not and is determined not to reveal to the world what it is doing.
In Washington, before the House Un-American Activities Committee, self-confessed Soviet agent Elizabeth Bentley accused several government officials of communism. Nathan Silvermaster of the Bureau of Economic Welfare denied Miss Bentley's claims.
The charges made by Miss Bentley are false and fantastic. I can only conclude that she is a neurotic liar.
At a later hearing, Miss Bentley replied to charges of inaccuracy and defended the truth of her testimony.
I worked for a year and a half with the FBI on this story. I feel that my story should stand on its own merits, and I feel that the facts will stand and speak for themselves.
Meanwhile, in New York, Mrs. Oksana Kasenkina, a Russian teacher, made headlines when she tried to escape the so-called protective custody imposed upon her by Soviet consul Lomakin. Mrs. Kasenkina leaped from a window in the consulate. Injured severely, she was taken to Manhattan's Roosevelt Hospital, where she refused to see visitors from the consulate and denounced the Soviet government. Mikhail Samarin, another Russian teacher, testified before the Un-American Activities Committee.
What would happen to you now that you have made this statement about conditions in the Soviet Union if you were to be returned to Russia at this time?
My wife and I would be shot or sent to concentration camp for life.
From coast to coast, the Freedom Train thrilled millions of Americans with its message of liberty. Historic documents of our priceless heritage were specially prepared and sent on display under an honor guard of Marines to show Mr. and Mrs. America the milestones in our democratic development. Among the documents of greatest interest are these originals. The Treaty of Paris, which ended the Revolutionary War, signed by Adams, Franklin, and Jay. The first 10 amendments to the Constitution, our Bill of Rights. Washington's farewell address, bearing his distinctive signature. And Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, with the great emancipator's own corrections to his immortal speech. The Freedom Train, bearing these guarantees of liberty, symbolize the forward progress of America. On Election Day, President Truman scored one of the greatest upset victories in American political history by defeating the favorite Thomas E. Dewey. Truman expressed confidence from the moment he accepted the Democratic nomination in Philadelphia.
Senator Barkley and I'll win this election and make these Republicans like it. Don't you forget that.
As a candidate for re-election, the president waged a whirlwind campaign, always certain of success.
We're in a hard, tough fight against shrewd, rich opponents. They know they can't count on your vote. Their only hope is that you won't vote at all. They've misjudged you. I know that we're going to win this crusade for the right.
On Election Day, candidate Dewey went to the polls to register his vote, and in his hometown of Independence, Missouri, candidate Truman filled out his ballot. Worldwide radio broadcasts of the returns attested the importance of our national election in world affairs. America made its choice, and it's Harry. The popular Princess Elizabeth and her consort Philip became parents of a son. Heir to the British throne, Elizabeth drove a truck during the war and did her bit like any other subject. In historic Westminster Abbey, she and Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, were wed in 1947, amid all the pomp and pageantry befitting the nuptials of a royal princess. On Sunday evening, November 14th, the announcement of the birth of a prince at Buckingham Palace thrilled enthusiastic Londoners.